This is G.
Alright, so we're talking about people being hurt by the church or in the church. You want to tell us your story with that one?
I feel, well, for me, from personal experience, having going through a moment where people in the church would hurt you, or the church as it were, made me feel like God played favorites. Because there are people that would tell you, you need to be at a certain level if you want to interact with a certain person. You need to be at a certain level to move in certain things. Stuff like, okay, let's say for instance, maybe this Sunday you didn't make it to church.
Yeah.
Tell someone like, I didn't have money. First thing they'll hit you with, you don't have faith.
Yeah.
Second thing, same thing. So like, and then there are always these things like, a pastor has his generals saying like, even if you wanted to approach him, first you have to go like through generals who do not even like keep their mouth shut. So like whatever issues you express to them, you end up hearing them elsewhere.
So you were confiding in people, but they told the story to other people.
Exactly.
But how did it make you feel when the pastor, as you said, it has these generals around him? What was going through your mind seeing all that?
It made me feel like I was a second class child of God in any way. Like, is there some, because now I think it became that thing where people had to like step up to be someone. So it always made me feel like maybe the steps are not taken correctly, because it seems like everybody's on the same wave except me. So that made me feel like I wasn't in like, you know, where there's like a cool kids clique.
Yeah.
But then I wasn't part of the cool kids. No matter how hard I tried, I was just that guy that's like, oh yeah, there's that one brother who lacks faith. That's that guy.
Do you think that behavior amongst the Christians would make them fake Christians?
I wouldn't categorize it as fake Christian. I just feel like it's a lack of knowledge. I'd say like that's like a perfect display of a lack of knowledge, because most people, like, if you get like, there's one thing I've learned, and this has come from personal experience. There's a humbling point into knowing God. Like, you don't see yourself as more special, because if anything else, you feel to be like the most sinful guy ever, because you start keeping tab of how many things that don't meet the mark. So for people to feel like we've made it, we're the ones, I feel like there's something missing where they feel to look at it and say, okay, maybe like I'm a wretched man, I need grace. They look at it like, oh, now that I've known grace, I can be a certain person way better than everybody. Like I'm better than everybody. So it's pretty much a lack of knowledge.
So how deep or how wide is this problem in the church today?
It's very wide. It's wider than you think. Like, and funny thing is that it feels like, you know, those segregated camps, they also just hang out in like, so there's that special group of generals, they are there, and then everybody now starts fighting, trying to fit in, you know. And then it's a deep thing, because it also starts with their leaders. Their leaders were trying to be cool amongst other preachers. So now they'll be like, no, be like, can we be like Pastor, who's this one's church? Because they tithe 100,000 every month. So can we also do 100,000 or even more, to show that we are also people of the faith? So it's become more of like a competitive sport. People are not Christians for being in a relationship with God. They're Christians for being how much they can get from God, how much they can display and say has come from God. Like, you hear examples of people who've worked in, let's say, banks or something. They've stolen money, sponsored so many church events, and then they become those guys like, be like brother and sister, whatever.
Yeah.
And then they, because they've gotten that cosign from the pastor saying, this person is a Christian, this is what Christians do, they stop reflecting on their life.
Yeah. So what should be the solution today, and what does your current church look like, if that won't be too much to ask?
That's not too much to ask. Solution? A good whipping. Just
Right.
A solution would be more people being honest with themselves, especially not honest with themselves amongst other people, but honest with themselves before God. Because if you look at it and say, this is like the criteria of which God works, and then you look at yourself and say, okay, he says I should love my neighbor as I love myself. How much do I love myself? I'll put myself before anything and everybody else. Are you willing to do the same for your neighbor? If your answer is no, and that's bluntly no, then you have to now start doing those self-check tests and see where you need to work on yourself. For my current church, it's a cool place. Like, I don't see that, because For them, one thing that I love about them is that they believe no one is more special than the other. Like, be it a pastor, a deacon, whatever, like we're all God's children seeking the same grace, which is one thing that really resonated with me when I went there, because I was moving from a church where there was like all this that whole system, and then you're moving to a place where you even hear the pastor say, "Wretched man I am," and you're like, "Wretched, dude, if you're wretched, what more me?" That kind of thing. So it inspires you to even like get to know God on a personal level, because what is mostly encouraged is personal growth with God.
What would your word be to anyone out there who feels like, I don't want to be part of the church because they've done that to me? I've confided in them, but they didn't help me, but instead they went and told the world, if you know what I mean.
That is a difficult one, because even if you move churches, there's no guarantee that that won't happen again. I feel like we all have been blessed with people in our lives. Some of them are not even Christians, to be honest.
Yeah.
But they do give sound advice that might actually help you through a situation. Because I feel like God helps us in so many ways, verbal and non-verbal ways. So it could be something you do that inspires me to do something different about my situation.
Yeah.
So the church might hurt you, and the church will hurt you at best. But the thing that should never change about you is your relationship with God. Like, that's the most important one. Because the church will pass away, but then whatever you have with God will never pass away.
Your insecurities are overestimated. Yeah. When all we really need here is love.